Love it. Oh, some familiar names here. Amazing. This is great. Okay, cool. So I'm going to keep what I'm trying to do and why you see me looking around is I want to have the chat on one side and the slide on the other. And okay, I think I figured it out. Can you see the slide now? Sweet. That's great. All right, very good. And I'm on the side. Okay, cool. That's great. So we're going to just start in a couple minutes. So grab a glass of water if you need to. And then we will get right into this. This is going to be a great session. We have a big group, which is amazing. Otherwise, I'd normally unmute people to say, hey, and we could have a quick chat, but there was 140 RSVPs, which is pretty wild. So I want to make it valuable as possible and ensure that we don't have any technical glitches. All right, I'm going to fill up my water, do the same, and then we'll get going right at 11:05. So we got 3 minutes. Hey, everybody. All right. So just a couple more minutes and we'll get going. Oh, thanks for saying hey, Ernest, in the chat. Great to hear from you. I've been thinking a lot about you. For anyone that's wondering what I'm referencing, I spent a couple days with the wonderful team at rover.com in mid-February, just before COVID-19 broke out. And I've been thinking about them a lot because we did 2 sessions, one in Seattle and one in Spokane. And naturally, I watched my health quite a bit as things blew up afterwards. And I hope everyone there is doing all right. Working from home, I'm sure, but your team of all is well set up for that. Okay, we'll wait 1 more minute for anyone else that's joining, and then we'll get right on into it. Just a couple of housekeeping notes off the top, pre-housekeeping notes, let's say. If at all, if I cut out or if there's a glitch and you don't see the screen or anything of that sort, just put it in the chat. I'm going to do my best to monitor it as we go. We have, for anyone that just joined, I was just saying we have 140 RSVPs, which is amazing. And I also know that there's a bunch of teams that we've worked with that are watching this, so which is really cool and kind of nerve-wracking too. So. Also, this is I normally don't do many webinars, to be honest. I'm much more of an in-person facilitator, but this is the new norm. So, so bear with me as I adjust here. So we'll just wait another minute. Now we're good. Okay, so good morning, everybody. Thank you for taking the time. I take your time very seriously. So I'm going to ensure that the next 45 minutes are value-packed. And then after we end, what we're going to do is I'll hang out in the room for about another 10 for any Q&A. During the session, actually, I'll advance. I'll get to the details in a second. But in effect, we're going to go for 45 minutes. And then anyone that has to jet, anyone that can stick around and wants to have a dialogue around any particular challenges you're facing, I'm here, and we'll go from there. Okay, so for anyone that doesn't know me, my name's Jordan Dixani. I live in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. This is my home office right now. And what we do at Shift, we do a couple different things, but in particular, my work is all about working with teams. So I bridge the therapy world with the organizational, operational world to help teams simplify how they think about mental wellness, how they work on different challenges that they're having. And I have the great privilege of leading sessions, workshops, talks all over North America and abroad on this very topic. Shift, for clarity, just off the top, we have 3 different parts of the business. The first is Shift Collab, which is kind of our central umbrella, but also what our therapy practice is known as. We're getting close to around 60 therapists across Canada. Over 20 of those are based in our downtown Toronto clinic, which is of course solely virtual right now. We also have Shift People, which is more my area of the business. That's where we do workshops, facilitations, custom programs for companies all over North America and campuses too. And then we also run Real Campus. Many people don't know this about us because it's under a total different brand entirely, but it's all our team. It is the largest mental health benefits program for post-secondary students in the country. So we support 25-ish colleges and universities, some very big ones, as well as some more community ones. And it's tremendous across the board because we work with students very closely. And of course, this is a big part of our work right now. As campuses are closing down, students are looking for support. So suffice to say, there's an awful lot going on. The basics of this session is as follows for housekeeping. So number one, we have a big group, as I said, so let's use the chat for any questions. I will do my best to get to them. For anything that I do not get to, because you registered with your name and your email address, I will take it on myself to follow up in the next couple of days. Number two, we'll need our phones or an extra web browser window in a couple minutes for an interactive exercise that maybe some of you have been through with me. And then number three, which is not number two, I'll share anything afterwards that might be helpful. So don't worry about taking notes. If you want the slides, totally. If I reference a specific worksheet or resource we have and you want it, just email me afterwards, or I'll send them out, either or, and we'll make sure that you get what you need. Okay, so Shift, big team. As I said, growing a lot. This photo was a couple of years ago at a social event. We went to a Blue Jays game. And things have changed very quickly for us in the last week and a half. Just like any business, I want to stress we are not in any sort of particular difficult stage. Our hearts go out for service workers, healthcare workers, people that are on the front lines. We, as a small business, of course, are feeling the pinch, just like any of your organizations as well. What we found, we went totally virtual as of Tuesday, and right away, within 24 hours, on our calendar for the next month, 50% of sessions were canceled. And then at the same time, this had already been happening beforehand, but it was especially aggressive early this week. All events, so that our workshops, facilitating, speaking, have been canceled basically through to the end of summer. And those two are our primary revenue drivers. And at the same time, we've been saving up money to open a much bigger new clinic in Toronto, as well as we've been working really hard to save up some cash to promote staff, to move some part-time staff to full-time. So we've been feeling this grief. And what was really interesting, as I look back on it now, is at the time, we were just panicking. And for anyone that knows me personally, you'll know that I work with an amazing, brilliant therapist named Megan, who's my business partner and also my fiance. And we have our wedding this summer too. So all of a sudden we're thinking, oh my goodness, everything's falling apart. How are we going to keep feeding our team? How are we going to be able to sustain the practice? La, 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 la. And of course, that is the emotional reaction that we all have when faced with something so unprecedented as what's going on right now. The thing is we started to slow down a little bit. And other than Megan and myself, there's two other members on our leadership team. And those other two members, one of them I believe is in this right now, hi Rasha, are very good at seeing things from a different viewpoint than we do. Megan and I, for example, we both have ADHD. We're both very much out front kinds of leaders. So on the flip side, what tends to happen is we have people, fortunately, around us that kind of ground that. And what we started to notice very quickly is that we were worried about the functional needs of the organization. And I think that's what a lot of teams do. And maybe yours have done this a lot as well. And I just want to put a label on something that you might be kind of feeling or experiencing. When a business moves to a remote operation urgently and in a situation like this, it is very, very normal for the focus to be solely on how do we have continuity of business? How do we serve our clients? How do we keep cash coming in? How do we strategically manage our reserves? All that kind of stuff. And what we neglect, especially early on, is the emotional needs that each of us have during this time, and also just as working remotely. Now, the difference is for any of you that may work on remote teams the vast majority of the time, remote teams over time have built a really great culture much of the time and wonderful ways to stay emotionally tapped into each other. But for the vast majority of us, as I've learned, as for the vast majority, sorry, I was looking at the chat, for the vast majority of us, as I've learned, if we've worked in, oh, sorry, sorry, like 8 messages just popped up at once. I was worried it cut out. For the vast majority of us, we are putting the emotional needs separately. And that is causing us some challenges and grief. So if you feel that, you're not alone. What then happens? If we put our emotional needs aside, what happens over the long term? So we are not going to be as focused as a team on problem solving. We're going to be less engaged. We're going to be less productive. Might have a drop in passion. We might see eventually a drop in retention. I mean, remember, we don't know how long all of us are going to be working like this. It's just kind of a fact of the situation. And over time, people will drop off. Openings will happen. People will be hired. And it can also lead, of course, if we deprive our emotional needs, to more stress and anxiety than what's already going on, more absenteeism, people tuning out, or more of whatever is a threat to your organization. So this session is all about looking at this in a different way. So my goals for the session are very simple. One is to shine a light on our emotional needs as us on a webinar right now. And number 2, show how those emotional needs can be functionally met for the long term as we adapt to this new normal. And my hope is maybe by the end of it, maybe we are better off than where we started. So for anyone that's seen me facilitate in the last couple of years here, and for those of you that haven't, you'll know that we love to do this interactive texting exercise. So here's the deal. We figured out that the quickest way to build intimacy and trust with any group is to ask them a very difficult question and invite them to share it by texting it anonymously, okay? And then it will pop up on the screen here. Now, I've done this on a webinar once ever, and it went okay, but I've made lots of adjustments and I'm hoping it goes well today. So what's gonna happen here is very simple. So your message, I'm gonna ask you a question in a second and give you a number. And then your message is going to go into that runs to my iPad, okay? And then I'm just gonna approve them and we're gonna look at them in silence for a moment and then I'll read some aloud. And the goal is for us to normalize and see that all of us are in this together and maybe give us an outlet that we don't otherwise have, okay? Now, this system is not traceable, so we can't figure out who's texting what. We built it that way ourselves. We have a patent pending on it for that very reason. So it's tremendously effective. So there's no fear of shame or embarrassment, I promise you, okay? So give it a shot, take out your phone. The number for today is a Canadian number. So for any friends that are in the US, if you're cool with international texting, go for it. But if not, you can also go to this URL. So the number is 647-697-7407. And we change these numbers periodically. So just so you know, this number will be shut down like next week. So that's 647-697-6407. Or if you are on your computer, you can go to share.yourbiglie.com. And then you will see a big red page and it'll say, what's your big lie on it? And that is a youth program that we have where we start to use all of this, which is not the subject of today. But you'll see a text box just below the What's Your Big Lie logo, and then you can input whatever. So phone's out, here we go. I'm gonna give you about a minute, okay? So here's the question, and answer it just honestly, totally honestly, in a sentence or two. Just be open, maybe more open than you've been with your partner, your family, your teammates, whatever. The world is a mess right now. I think we can all agree on that. How are you really doing? And if you really want to focus it, like, think about the things that have just been running through your mind. If you've had any episodes of exhaustive anxiety or any panic attacks or something's keeping you up at night, like, how are you really doing? Okay? Like, I'll be honest, I lead with a lot of vulnerability. Like, it's been a shit show over here. Like, it's just, we're working really hard to keep active communication and keep the wheels on the bus. But naturally, there's so many unknowns. My parents are a little older too. I worry extensively about them. I'm worried about our team. I'm worried about us. My dog's been sick. Our little Boston Terrier, Arthur, has been a little sick. So naturally I'm like, oh no, is it COVID-19? Like, I mean, there's a lot of fears and we're even kind of scared to go outside. Like, what kind of world is that? So I'm struggling a lot with this. I know I come off as very jovial and easy because I'm excited. I like to do this stuff, but like, It's scary. I'm really genuinely scared right now. How are you doing? Take 30 more seconds and write it in and hit send. Okay, it's that simple. And you can delete your message right afterwards from your text message inbox. Okay. So just another 30 seconds. I'm just going to be silent for a moment to let everyone write in what they have to. Okay, take about another 10 seconds or so. Okay, so when you're done, you can put your phone down. We're only going to do the one question today, okay? So to give you a sense of what's happening for what I see on my screen right now, and again, I'll put this up on the actual monitor in a moment, but this is what's coming in right now, okay? All of these messages are from this group online right here today. And honestly, I'm astounded. I didn't actually think this would work. I didn't think we'd get as much, truthfully, because in person, we have to get a lot of, there's a certain way to get people to feel like they can share. So I commend you for being at home right now and being able to do that. So if you would like, take a mental note of what that felt like to write that down and let that go. In a facilitated live event, I would go around the audience right now and say, how did that feel? But instead today, just take a mental note of where you're at and how it felt to let that just out into the world, okay? Now, I'm going to select a couple and I'm going to switch the screen here. Warning though, this might be a little clunky for a second because I have to switch which screen is being shared, and I'm not yet a Zoom ninja, but I'm working on it. So, okay, so here we go. So new share. And then I'm gonna go over here. And then I'm gonna, okay. So just so I know right now, can you see that? Can you see those submissions? If anyone wants to throw it in the chat, that would be amazing. No, oh no. Oh man, okay. My big reveal was struggling. Okay, wait a second, let me try this again. Okay, I'm going to, oh, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna stop sharing everything. Oh my goodness, okay. Okay, now I'm gonna share this. Okay, can you see them now? Perfect, okay, great. Okay, so here we go. I'm just gonna start from the top. Because we have so many, I'm gonna have to go pretty quickly, so catch what you can, okay? Those last two go together, elderly parent. Everything is terrifying. I'm having a baby in 6 weeks. This is nuts. Wow. My heart goes out to you. Thank you for sharing that. I feel numb. I'm scared, but I'm trying to be calm for my kids. I'm feeling nervous. I'm being strong for my family and my team. I find comfort knowing that we're in this together. Not great. The world, as you knew it, is gone. I'm worried about the future. This isn't humanity ending, but at the same time, it's just so jarring. I'm in shock. It feels surreal, trying to stay as grounded as possible. I'm terrified that when the economy tanks, I'll lose my job. I'm very worried at times about family and friends and those I love. I'm finding it hard to live through my daily routines. It feels like I'm living in a scary movie. I'm doing okay right now. Starting to worry about those I know are more vulnerable. Whew, all right, let's keep going. I haven't quite come to terms with what's going on. I bet that's a lot of us, right? If you see, as we're going through these, by the way, if you're able to have the chat window, feel free to respond to any of them. Like write a little comment that says, to the person that said X, I want you to know that Y. Send a message of affirmation, even if it's a, hey, person that said this, I'm totally there too. Or person that said this, my uncle's going through the same thing. Or person like this, oh my goodness, that must be really hard. How are you doing? And we don't have to respond to them. We don't know who said what. That's the beauty, right? And so don't identify yourself. Don't respond back to it, but just feel free to write it down and share some love here. Okay, we're gonna go through a bunch more. Feeling a sense of doom for the future. I'm worried about the health of my kids. I'm feeling confused. I'm terrified. I'm good, but tend to get worked up off other people's anxiety. Oh my goodness, you and me both. I'm overwhelmed. I'm grateful for all the options available to me in Canada, but scared about the uncertainty each day brings. Absolutely. I'm anxious about the health of everyone I know. I feel incredibly distracted. Oh, me too. I'm focusing on I'm trying to focus on my priorities, working remotely. I'm feeling more emotionally and physical tired and scared for the future. Right? This stuff is in our bodies too. It's exhausting. I'm feeling very achy, you know? And so you're not alone, whoever shared that. I'm concerned for the parents who are still working and for our parents. I'm feeling, oh, we already did that one. I wonder if I'm being totally naive as a means of self-preservation. Wow, whoever shared that, thank you. I wonder that too myself. I mean, it can be a coping mechanism. Okay, I'm gonna hammer out a bunch here without saying them out loud so that we can stay on time here. But what you can do is, other than responding to any of the ones that come in, if you want to just say how you're feeling seeing all of these in the chat, that might be really beneficial for other people to see too, okay? So whatever your visceral feeling, whatever your response is right now, just write that down. Oh my goodness, there's so many. Okay, and they keep going. I don't think I'm gonna be able to get them all up right now, but oh, maybe I can, actually, okay. Let me make sure, I wanna try to get them all up. How on earth am I gonna help my anxious patients when I'm super anxious about everything? Thank you for that. I'm assuming you're a healthcare worker. Thank you for being here and taking the time. Absolutely, you're human too. And obviously, we're looking at healthcare workers right now as superhumans, but thank you for doing what you do. It matters so much right now. But don't lose touch of being human and asking for what you need. Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay. I mean, there's still a bunch more that, oh, there's still a bunch more that are going to come in. And that's how we go. So keep it writing, whatever you're experiencing, whatever you're feeling right now. Why I'm encouraging you to write down your response to these is a couple things. One, it's a stepping stone from being fully anonymous here, right, to being able to put your name to a message in a public forum. That's a stepping stone. That's a brave thing. If you don't feel like doing that, that's okay, but feel free just to share anything that comes up for you as you reflect on these. Really slowly, I'm just gonna scroll through, well, not that slowly, because we don't have much time, but I'm just gonna scroll through so you can just catch some keywords. Normally, in a full workshop, we would spend about 30 minutes-ish just digging into these. So we're doing an abbreviated version, okay? Okay, now, second mental photo to take. Aside from the feeling that you had when you wrote something down and let it go, the second one is, how did it feel when you saw other submissions that weren't yours that were very similar to what you were saying? It probably felt a little bizarre because it's an empirical way to see that you're not alone, to be sure, but it also maybe felt comforting. Maybe it felt unifying. Maybe it felt really scary and uncomfortable. Whatever it was, trust that. Take a mental image of that. Okay, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for giving this a shot, truly. With all this in mind now, let's keep going ahead and figure out what to do with all of this. The reason that this exercise is so important is we culturally often believe that we're the only ones that are feeling the certain way. And right now there's a countercurrent to that, which is we're all undergoing this big existential threat. So when there's a big threat, it tends to bring people together because we all feel it. But even below that, the anxiety, the emotion, the fears, the hopes, the shame, the guilt, all of that is still unique to us and our belief system about the world and who we are. So that's why it's important just to take this in and see that we are all in this together, okay? Because we can't support our teams, we can't feel connected, we can't improve our businesses unless we get there, okay? So now I'm going to stop sharing there, okay? And I'm gonna move back over to the slides. Okay, just a helpful message in the chat if you wouldn't mind. Can you see my slides again? No? Oh my goodness. Who let me run a webinar? My goodness, it's not my forte. Okay, hold on. Oh, I didn't hit the share button. Oh, okay, share. Oh, it's up to you. Okay, share. Okay, now? Yes, all right. Thank you for your patience, guys. Okay, here's the deal. Back to formal programming. Ask yourself right now, what you just shared in the anonymous texting, have you shared that with your team? Maybe not your whole team, but have you shared that with your either a colleague that you're really close with on your team, with your manager, with your boss, with a direct report? Have you shared that? Yes or no? Feel free to throw it in the chat as well. What we often hear when we go into workplaces is there's a discomfort to bring our full selves to work. And fortunately, in many different industries and organizations, this is changing pretty quickly with the rise of the popular dialogue on mental health. There's a vulnerability culture movement. There's a lot more ability to be open, but that is not all of the working world at all by any stretch. So what we hear time and again when we go and work with different industries is an overwhelming sense that I can't bring myself to be at work as me. And it shows up in a bunch of different ways. Maybe someone's not saying I can't be myself, but maybe they're saying I can't share that part of me. Or they wouldn't value me if they knew the truth. They wouldn't believe me. Or maybe I'll never get ahead, I'll never get promoted if they knew the real me, if they saw my home life, if they saw where I was from, if they knew about my vices, if they knew about what's really going on in my head, or the underlying, I'm not good enough to be here. It shows up in a bunch of different ways. And it's this voice that's in our head all the time. It's a nasty roommate, and it's always saying these things back to us. And as we go through the corporate world, or any organization, there's certain standards, there's certain ways of being and showing up. There's certain ways of feeling like we fit in with our industry to get ahead. And kudos for anyone here that goes against that current, truthfully. Unfortunately, the vast majority of people feel like they are wearing a bit of a mask at work. Now, if we look at the building blocks of what makes a connected, mentally healthy team, it breaks down pretty simply, okay? So if we want to lessen this stuff, we have to think about this stuff, the building blocks of a mentally well team. We call this the DNA of a mentally well team. It's a model we built out a year ago, and it's super helpful to think about this. So essentially, on your team and within your organization, there are three overlapping buckets. There is the values, and these can be implicit or explicit value statements of what you stand for as a team. I'm going to keep this dialogue focused at the team level because it's just it simplifies things for this, but at a team level, there's a sense of what you stand for. There's a sense of mission, purpose, and it may not always be super clear, but there is some underlying thing that's there. Secondly, there's your policies. So what you say that you'll do, right? And these, again, can be written down or they can be verbal. Like when we think of workplace policies, we often think of like the employee handbook, which fair, like that's one version of it. But the other side of it is, what are the conversations that are happening? What are the promises that are being made to you about your future? What are the, like we put it in a simple way. If a direct report is sitting down with their manager and the manager says, I believe in you, I'm going to fight for you to get a raise, that is a policy statement because it's what you say you'll do. And then the third bucket is your actions. So what you actually do. And on teams where there is limited mental wellness, and by that I mean where there are behaviors that detract from our individual mental health, we're often missing one or two of these buckets in a serious way. So for example, where we see a lot of retention issues comes from teams where, for example, maybe the organization, maybe the team has a very clear, super compelling value statement and mission. And maybe their policies are really on point and you would think they're a wonderful group to be with. But then the actions just don't follow through, right? And when the actions don't follow through, we won't believe. And when we don't believe, we're not going to feel valued, we're not going to feel heard. And all of a sudden, the stress and anxiety just billows up. And that doesn't just happen on the individual basis, it happens on a team level, then a departmental level, then an organizational level, okay? You and me and each one of us, every member of organization is at the middle of this. And what is difficult for many organizations is that what people need from each of those three buckets varies from individual to individual. And that's why in the more aggressive form of this, you see organizations that have such wide value statements and such wide policies, and their actions are so like big and hard to get your hands around that you don't feel a sense of connection or value, right? Because in the middle, like if an organization or a team tries to be everything to everyone, it will be nothing to anybody, right? And this is directly exacerbated by what's going on right now. Like this is really hard to pull off at the best of times. Like I want to stress that. I've worked with some teams for years. This stuff is super, super hard to dial in and tweak, let alone what's going on right now. But it's important to use this as a frame of reference as you and your team are making decisions around how you are going to work and feel emotionally supportive in the days and weeks ahead. You need to think about what you stand for, what you'll say you'll do, and what you'll actually do. Now, I'm going to ground that a little bit more. So great. So say you nail it and you have a lot of your mental wellness on your team is feeling pretty good. You're contributing to people's mental health positively. You're feeling like we're setting people up to be resilient and strong. What does that actually look like? Well, it looks like a bunch of things, and it'll change from team to team, right? It could mean that like you're always prioritizing psychological safety, which means employees feel safe to bring their ideas out and take risks. Maybe there's a deep desire to better one another, almost like a family kind of vibe. Maybe you follow the honesty, trust, loyalty approach, which was taught to me by an old mentor, which, and this is a very good line, so feel free to write it down, it's not mine. But the problem with trust, honesty, and loyalty is that if you lose one, you lose all three. Many team cultures thrive on having aggressive honesty, aggressive trust, and aggressive loyalty. That's what, for example, a lot of Ray Dalio's work is based on. If you've read Principles, an incredible business book. Or maybe it looks a little different. Maybe your organization builds this sense of connection from supporting each other's goals outside of work. This is very much an Apple approach, by the way. One of their major approaches to HR is leave people better than you found them. And so they will help you get back to school. They'll help you eventually move to another business or start your own if that's what you want in some areas of the business, not necessarily all. If you're a senior leadership, if you're in a senior position, they'll want to keep you. But otherwise, there's a lot of support for bettering people. Maybe you have a strict no asshole policy that you band around. And I know that sounds very trite, and you're probably looking at me being like, who's this joker? But seriously, like a lot of teams prioritize that with amazing results because it speaks volumes over time. Or maybe you just have unique routines and habits that make your team really funky and cool and interesting. More likely though, for any of you that have ever been on a team where you feel really connected, you feel like your work supports your mental health, it's probably a combination of all of these things in different ways and more. So that's why we can't exactly break it down to the framework of what exactly to do, but we can say, okay, how do our values, our policies, and our actions fit within the decisions we make and how we run our teams? Because at the end of the day, what we want to do right now is get everyone on your team and in your organization to feel like they can be their full selves, even if you're working remotely during a pandemic, okay? So to do this and to demonstrate the tactical elements of that, so now I'm done with like the high and practical kind of stuff. I mean, I really like mental models. It helps me with ideas, but you're probably sitting there thinking, okay, dude, so what should we actually do? Well, here's what you should actually do. So we're going to go through 5 do's and don'ts. I wrote a blog last week, and much to my surprise, like thousands and thousands of people have read it, and people that I would have never, ever expected shared it. So I distilled some stuff from that and then built on it with the team to distill this down to 5 do's and don'ts. And this is not exhaustive, but these are decisions that you can make right now in how your team is dealing with this transition. And the outcomes, if you make some of these tactics your own, can be extremely beneficial to helping your team feel connected right now. Okay, so I'm gonna do the don't first, and then we're gonna do a do. So we're gonna do like, don't do this, do this, okay? So here we go. Don't number 1, use the old playbook. And by that, I mean, every organization has a certain operating set of policies and procedures that are in place when you're working in a physical office together. And the problem is that has merit in some way, shape, or form of operating, but it's not acknowledging what is going on right now. It's not acknowledging the systemic chaos that maybe our IT systems are in, maybe that there's uncertainty in project management, maybe that it's not clear when and how we'll meet. So that old playbook of acting like we're working together in one building is just not applicable right now. Instead, build a living handbook, okay? So a handbook specifically for working remote during COVID-19, all about how your team is going to work together. This was, and I'm not big on tooting our own horn at all. We do some things really well. We do other things not so well. But one thing we did well when we adjusted earlier this week to this reality is it was clear by Saturday, Sunday that the whole team was going to have to move virtual, okay? We spent all day on Sunday working on a handbook. This is the first page. And what it outlines, it's about 20 pages, I think. And it's updated every day with all the developments. But what we did at the front end is we established the guiding principles that were going to guide our decision-making during this time. So you can read them, probably just the 1, 2, 3, 4 bullets down there. Health and safety for all, plan ahead and prepare for change, that we're gonna focus on thought leadership and business continuity, and do that collectively. And then we're gonna express a gnarly amount of gratitude for each other. But then further on in the document, we enact those principles. So we determine when and how we'll communicate, what's going to change operationally, what's going to stay the same operationally, how everyone can help with the transition. I mean, for many of us, especially with smaller or medium-sized teams, it's an all hands on deck approach right now. The old delegation that you were doing on tasks, I mean, some of that will still be active, but there's going to be other gaps that will need to be filled. And you're probably not running out and hiring someone right now. You may be getting a contractor, but like there's gaps that you have to fill. So how can everyone partake in that? We linked internal and external communications. We linked different documents and forms that we needed people to complete. We linked a specific content tracker, for example. Being a mental health business, a huge part of what we do is developing content, written and video content. So we attach a spreadsheet that gets updated around who's doing what the status is, where it's got to go. And so all of a sudden, this was the one thing that each of us needed to be looking at this week. And it has simplified things dramatically. And more importantly, because we addressed this functional need that we needed to know how we were going to operate, our team is banded together in a very cool way. I'm going to touch more on that in a little bit. So that's number one. Number two, this is very important. Don't work from anywhere, anytime. A lot of us, when we're working from home, we can tend to, start doing some emails in bed, go downstairs to the coffee table, sit on the couch for a bit, maybe work outside if it's nice. If we can still go outdoors, which we can't, go to a coffee shop, and we'll do the kind of cycle all day, every day. So number one, that is super disruptive for your productivity, okay? First thing. Secondly, it sets horrible boundaries for where you're gonna work in your house. Fun fact, if you work from bed, it is extremely likely that your intimacy is gonna go way down because you're going to associate your bed with work. There's been tons of studies on it, look it up, it's mind-boggling. But very true, you can see how it would be real. So what you want to do instead, actually that was first 2 points. Third point is it's disastrous for teamwork. And we don't think about it because we're thinking, okay, I'm working from home. I'm just doing my work, I'm online, yeah, whatever. If they need me, they can get me. That's not the point. The point is you have to pretend that you're still working in a building together. And that means having a very clear plan of when and how you are going to work. So the do side of that is keep a normal schedule as a team. If you have normal set office hours, keep those hours. Even though, for example, in our business, all of our therapy clients have moved to virtual sessions, it's still the exact same calendar and schedule between our care coordination team, which handles intake and client relations, the therapists, management, peer supervision, all of that is at the exact same time. We've added in a couple other things that I'll touch on in a bit that have been helpful, but otherwise, that's it. So you want to keep a normal schedule as a team, and you want to be able to ideally work from home in a place that is going to allow you to focus. Now, I acknowledge I don't have kids. I have 2 fur babies, Mr. Kitty, an adopted cat, and Arthur, Boston Terrier, and I had to kick them out of the room just for this, or else they'd be in here all over me. And that's distracting enough. I can't imagine having kids that are running in and out that aren't at school and dealing with everything else going on. But try your best to find a place where you can limit those distractions. And then on top of that, try to not get stuck in the trap of checking in and out. So like, by all means, start your day and end your day. But what check in and check out, what I mean by that is like weaving in personal errands and house things during the day. It's very tempting for us to do this. But if you're not focused, you're not going to get your work done, and you're not going to have the opportunity to connect with your team intimately, which is what we're getting to next. You need to protect your working hours, even though you're working at home, because it's not just about you getting stuff done, it's about your relationship with your team. And if you don't protect that, and if your team's working at different times at all hours of the day, it is disastrous. Which brings me to my next point. Don't. Number 3, communicate everywhere all the time. Many of you probably have different ways that you communicate on different channels. You may use Slack, you may use email, you may use calls, or some of you may be used to just going in together and basically sitting in one space and being able to turn to the next person and say, hey, what do you think about this? And then having a weekly status meeting where you grab a small group. Now that you are remote, you need to do things differently, and you need to be extremely deliberate about it, or else it will be exhausting for everybody and drive everyone apart. So that means establishing communication boundaries, okay? And that means a bunch of different things. First, it means what are the channels you're going to use, okay? So there's 4 different kinds of communication channels that teams use. And you can ideally use a combination of them in different ways to allow that human connection and also the practical things that, the practical means that you need to get your work done. So one style is asynchronous messaging, which is more of a message board style chat. That is what's built in and what a lot of the functionality in Basecamp, the project management software, if you haven't seen it, that's how they've built it. And Basecamp, as an aside, amazing resource to check out. They're one of the original software companies that believed in remote work. They've written extensively on the subject. They are essentially the go-to experts on how to be productive while working remote. Granted, they also have a software team, which is a little bit different. So you keep that in mind. Number 2 is live chat. So real-time messaging between people. Slack is a good example of this, or WeChat, HipChat. There's a couple other ones, but Slack, we use it, and it can be great, but also really challenging. Email, of course, unavoidable, necessary evil. Calls and meetings, scheduled conversation. And then there's kind of another one, which is impromptu calls and messages outside of those channels. So if you've ever worked with anyone that will, for example, text you instead of Slack you, or call you instead of waiting for a scheduled time, those people are kind of disruptors, and we need to figure out a way to keep those people at bay. What you need to do with your team, and ideally in your handbook, is figure out when you are going to communicate. So for example, set expectations. We are going to communicate between 9 o'clock in the morning and 5 p.m. at night. And that's it. If you respond to anything else outside of that, we're all going to have our notifications turned off. We're not engaging. Really important you set that boundary, or else it's not clear. Our team, we struggle with this a lot because we operate from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day, and you betcha there's stuff going on every minute of every day. But it's really important that as a team, you figure out when each other are working and what those boundaries look like, okay? How it will happen. So my suggestion, for whatever it's worth, is to say, okay, we're going to use live chat like Slack for only quick things, like a quick update. Hey guys, this thing's going on. Or, hey, quick question in a direct message, a one-on-one conversation. Or when you need to ask someone for immediate support or help, okay? So it's just like immediate conversation. And it's understood that each individual will respond as soon as they can, but maybe they're not going to check it every minute of every day. We use it that way, and we find it to be tremendously helpful. And what it does is it limits a lot of emails and unnecessary threads and headache. And then we use email for anything that's more formal or external. And that works really well for us. We do have a third channel, which is customer service communication. So we use a platform for all of our customer service stuff called Front, and it allows us to communicate around specific ticket numbers and different cases. Sometimes that's really helpful if you're in a customer service role. But again, if you're doing that already, you would have been doing that before you've worked remote. So figuring out, having a dialogue with your team around how you're going to communicate is very important. And then the last piece of that is who's going to initiate, right? Especially when we work remotely, it's very unclear for many who's going to initiate a dialogue around a certain challenge, issue, product, or whatever. If you have regular status update meetings like every day, that's one thing, but a lot of teams do not, okay? So as much as you have all of this and you figure out your channels, figuring out how you're going to communicate, when you're going to communicate, what's just as important is when you are not going to communicate, okay? Because working remote can mean that you have a lot more communication to do. So another suggestion, aside from having hard stops and ends every day, the other suggestion I have is to black out like 1 or 2 afternoons a week just for deep work, okay? So deep work meaning focused work, get some heavy duty work done with no distractions whatsoever, make it be known, the whole team operates that way. It's a very, very normal thing in creative companies and tech companies to do that, and it works wonders because if our attention is being broken up every couple minutes, we're not going to be that productive, and this only escalates when we're at home because we are not in a physical space together, we're not used to communicating this way, so all of a sudden it gets really messy. Number 4, don't be fearful because you can't see each other. Oh, I learned this one the hard way many years ago. I've been working remotely off and on for about 6 years now. And initially, I, as a manager, and now as a business owner, I had been extremely fearful if someone wasn't working and I couldn't see them working. And ultimately, the cliche thing is to say, oh, that's a trust thing, right? You don't trust your employee. I trusted them. I totally trusted them. But the problem was, is I didn't trust myself, which is a very different thing. So I trusted them to get the work done and do the tasks that were assigned and responsible for the outcomes. But I have been, and I've been worked on a lot, I have not been the best delegator in my career. I could hold on to a lot. And I didn't necessarily trust myself to ensure that that person has the right outcome or tasks assigned to them, because I would hold on to stuff, right? Because I think things are too precious for me. So if any of you are encountering or feeling this way yourself right now, feeling a sense of fear around, ooh, what's that person doing at home? Ooh, I really should check. I really want to see a task list. I need a daily list of every little thing that they've done. I want to do a screen share so I can see what they're doing all the time. Whatever it is, that is fear talking, fear of uncertainty. And often it's fear that comes from the manager. So what you can do instead is figure out how to have more touch points so that you can limit that fear. And often these touch points aren't around the work. I mean, check in on the work, figure your normal check-in schedule. Some companies will do just a 10-minute stand-up meeting in the morning just to get a quick pulse, what everyone's working on, how you're feeling. But the more important thing to do right now, and this is a big opportunity for connection, is think about the experiences you had in your physical office that were amazing, okay? Like things that you did together at a team that were just unbelievable. You loved doing Friday afternoon beers together. You loved playing ping pong together. You loved your walking social club at lunch. You loved this, you loved that. You loved having water cooler time to talk about reality TV. You loved to be able to have lunch with different members of your team. Whatever it might be, those little pieces that you loved about working where you loved, how can you adapt those creatively online? Now, I was in a session the other day with a bunch of people that work in the events industry, because the events industry, of course, has been just really beat up by all the cancellations. And it's amazing to see what people are coming up with now as they move these pretty expensive conferences and events to fully online. Like, can you, for example, like one gentleman in the group was showing a photo of having a comedian perform a show for their team over Zoom. JP Sears, really well-known, awesome comedian and social media personality, was like on Zoom, like I am with you, doing a performance for their attendees that were also all on Zoom from their own homes. Like, how cool is that? But more importantly, I mean, unless you're bringing in JP Sears every day into your office, in which case I want to work for you. What are the unique routines? What are the ways that you celebrate? What are the team building events that you have? What can you do together that you have done anyway? So a couple ideas to consider. So one is, make sure you don't stop celebrating. So maybe you have like a little alarm or Slack message that goes out whenever someone has a win, and you all hop onto the same Zoom link at the same time to say congrats and celebrate. Maybe Friday afternoon, maybe you do have that social beer time and everyone sits at home with a beer or with a cider or a non-alcoholic beverage and says cheers to the week, right? Maybe you share a meal together. Maybe you still eat lunch together over webcam. And maybe, and I know this is going to sound a little out there, maybe you do some of that muted. Maybe you just do it with each other with your webcam on so that you can see each other doing it, because that is pretty close, as close as we can get right now to feeling that connection. Maybe you create flexible water cooler talk time, right? Maybe like every day from 10:10 to 10:15 is a quick chat, either on Slack or video or phone or whatever works for you, just to shoot the shit, because we build deep relationships at work. And oftentimes we are not good as human beings of adapting our relationships when we're no longer around people, right? We move a city, we lose touch with people. But when we were in that city, we had a blast with them. It's the same thing when we're working from an office and we're transitioning. So how can you adapt? How can you do little things? And I can't stress, this is little simple things in order to feel that connection, okay? Number 5, most importantly in many ways, don't put off dealing with your needs. We are in an uncertain time. We do not know where or when we are going to get back into our normal working life, okay? We just don't know when we're going to be back in our office. So for right now, we have to assume that this is how it's going to be for a little bit. And that means you can't put off dealing with your own needs. If you are dealing with any functions with HR, with workplace accommodations, with a promotion, with hiring, with leaving, with whatever you're dealing with getting more support or coaching, whatever it is, don't put that off. Those things have to continue as part of the business. It's part of the social contract employers like me make with people that want to work with us. Like, we have to be able to have that continuity, okay? We have to be able to continue those dialogues, whether we're in person or not. It's absolutely essential. And so what we can do instead is be very mindful of our own needs and our differences, okay? And this is a little more tricky, because when we are in an office environment, this brings me back to my opening around wearing a mask. When we are in an office environment, a certain part of ourselves is often projected. And it's not to say you're faking it all the time. Maybe you feel like that, many people do, but a certain side of our lives is shown. We don't know what's going on in someone's home life, right? We don't know how their relationship is. We don't know where they're living, or there's so many things we just don't know about people's lives. And if we assume that the antidote to that is going to be, oh, let's just hop on a Zoom call, a video call, and chat it away, that may not be the solution, because that may not be what everyone needs or what everyone feels comfortable with either. So this is the tricky part, especially for those of you in this room that manage people directly. You gotta figure out exactly what each person needs and what the collective needs, and figure out what that middle ground is, to be able to be mindful of everyone's needs and their differences, and figure out a way to operate inclusively while working remotely. Now that's a huge topic, and there's reams of articles coming out about the unique ways that people are adapting to remote work right now. And so, if nothing else, this is just a call to be mindful of that. And the other thing too is, as a manager and as an employee, please, going back to your own needs. If you are a manager and if you have ongoing dialogues around coaching an employee, more support, a performance plan, maybe different workplace accommodations, maybe referral or more support for mental health resources or needs, do not put that off, okay? Part of being mindful of our own and others' differences and needs is that we have to assume as well that everything is just as important as it was the last day that we were at the office. Because again, if we deprive people of that, if we stop taking the action, remember the three things: values, policy, action. If we don't take the action right now, we're going to see disengagement, because this may last a week, it may last a month, it may last 6 months, but the human component of working together needs to continue. So throw into the chat right now, and we're just starting the wrap up right here. Throw into the chat right now what's working for your team so far. If you've come up with any creative solutions or hacks or ways of interacting, ways of sharing work, ways of celebrating, ways of staying attached at the hip, whatever it is, whatever works for your team. If you've come across anything for you that's working, please share it. I will collect all of these and I'll figure out how to get them out to everyone, because we're going to wrap up before we're going to be able to finish all that up. So just write it in quickly right now. Here's what I want to end with, okay? We've covered a lot of ground. So remember, we started by talking about wearing a mask at work, seeing how everyone here is doing, talking about the system of a mentally well team and what that could look like. And then we started talking about some of the do's and don'ts as we undergo this transition to working remote, okay? The thing to remember is every team is absolutely unique. And so even if out of this session, if you get 1 or 2 ideas and that's it, that's a success, 100%. That is totally a successful thing. If you take 2 ideas from here and run with it and you know a little bit more than before, fantastic, okay? Not everything is universal. I only shared the things that worked for us because I know they work for us, and I know if they work for us, they'll at least work for some others, but it's not to say they'll work for everybody. So every team is unique. Take what works, leave the rest, okay? In closing, I want to say, first of all, if you're still writing about what's working for you, please do that. Get it down, because I will email out the anonymous shares to everyone that RSVP'd for this event, because I think it's really important to have that idea exchange. I will also send out the video and the slides to everybody as well. A couple of people had asked in the comments, okay? If you like this webinar, so first things first, number one, we're gonna do a lot more of these. Like I said, the demand today was amazing. We had to purchase a bigger Zoom package, which is pretty cool, I guess, although Zoom is charging a lot of money right now. So buy Zoom stock. But outside of that, we're going to be doing more of these. I will email more to you. It may be me leading them. It may be Megan. It may be another member of our team, but we're dedicated to providing value and supporting others. If you're interested in trying out therapy right now, virtually, you can try it with us. We'd love that. As a small business, as I said, we've taken a big hit there. So new business or any referrals, keeping us top of mind, it's super, super appreciated. Truthfully. Secondly, oh, my phone's ringing. The next one is, if you like this, feel free to leave a Google review. And then lastly, goes without saying, if you ever have any needs for your team, now while we're all working virtually or in the future, if you could keep us top of mind for any of these sorts of dialogues, that'd be tremendous. You can find out more about that at shiftpeople.ca. You can find out more about our therapy business, our collective practice at shiftcollab.com. And lastly, I just want to say again, a big thank you to each of you for showing up, for playing full out, sharing, and by that I mean sharing the way you did. My goodness, that was incredible. I hope this has been valuable for you. And as you go and close this meeting, you're going to be directed to a delighted, very quick 2-second NPS score. If you could give us a score, that would be great, because it helps us with adapting this stuff to online, which is very new for us. So any feedback is more than welcome. With that, I want to say thank you. Please, please have a wonderful rest of your day. We're rooting for you, and do keep in touch, okay? We're all in this together. Hold on to that. We saw it today in the submissions. It's true. We're all in this together. With that, I want to say thank you so much and have a great rest of your day. Unfortunately, oh, shoot. I had such a good ending. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to jump right now because I actually have a webinar that I'm leading with a bunch of students on productive habits right now. So I got to jump on that. But any Q&A, if you want to have any dialogues, send me an email and, and I'll follow up that way. I apologize. Jordan at shiftcollab.com. Again, shiftpeople.ca, shiftcollab.com. You're all amazing for taking the time today. I really hope this has been useful. Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.